G'day guys, Paul Murray here. Mount Gambier in South Australia is the next location for Our Town, Sunday the 27th of July, and I'd love you to join me in the audience. Our Town at skynews.com.au's the way to send us an email. It is one of the great hidden treasures of Australia, halfway between Melbourne and Adelaide, and bang on the place we're going to be. Sunday the 27th, Mount Gambier, Our Town at skynews.com.au. Now back to James.
Thank you, Paulie. And yeah, Mount Gambier is fantastic. Had a chance to go there a couple of years ago. It is amazing. Now, we're going to bring a panel in just a second, but also, first, before that, I've got some really exciting news for you. I'm thrilled to bring a little news here to you for our many thousands of regional viewers who rely on Sky for all the hard news and opinion that they can't get elsewhere. Today here we at Sky News Australia have entered into a new multi-year agreement with Network 10 so that we can continue broadcasting our free-to-air Sky News regional channel into regional markets across New South Wales, Victoria, and Queensland. Great news for everybody out there. So if you're sitting at home in the regions right now on the couch, then hello, and we can't wait to keep bringing you more of our leading political coverage, breaking news, sport, and opinion. All right, let's get into it now with the panel. National Senator, LNP Senator M.Canavan, and Lord Mayor of Melbourne, Nick Rees. And you know what? I have a feeling we're going to have a bit of a fiery evening here tonight because there's so much to talk about, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me here. Let's kick off here. I just had a big, long rant, I guess you could call it, about China and the Prime Minister's speech, time in China here. And one thing I want to talk to both of you about here, and Matt, maybe I'll start with you here. Alexander Downer, the former foreign minister, has written a brilliant piece in the Australian newspaper today. And he said that Australia is retreating. We are becoming critical commentators and not contributors to the security of free peoples. And this week, the Prime Minister is rushing to catch up with China's unelected dictator Xi Jinping before he's even met the President of the United States. The symbolism is stark. Matt Canavan, even if we take Donald Trump out of the equation, I do find the way that Labor is treating this trip as entirely a trade mission and ignoring basically all of the national security and geopolitical implications of this really kind of disturbing, and I feel like he is breaking us away ever so slightly from the United States, and Beijing must be looking at this and laughing.
Yeah, look, there's some of that I agree with James. I'm not quite as idealistic as some of the commentators in the newspaper. I mean, I'm not so sure it's our job to spread democracy around the world, and even if we wanted to, we couldn't. And it's not even our job to necessarily secure the borders of every country in the world. We just can't do that. And there are many conflicts in the world we do not get involved in. I squarely believe that we must conduct our foreign policy according to what's in the best interests of Australia. Now, it is in the best interests of our country that countries that show aggression or seek to pressure and bully other countries are not allowed to get away with it. So that's something we do need to combat. And there's something that I think is being completely missed here in, as I say, this flowery idealistic language about democracy and freedom. It's that right now, as we stand right now, the industrial tactics of the Chinese Communist Party have put thousands of Australians out of work in the last year, and there are thousands more on the chopping block if their practices continue. And there's almost zero commentary on this. It was because of the aggressive Chinese-financed coal-fired power stations in Indonesia that 10,000 Australians in the nickel industry lost their jobs last year. And now pretty much every smelter in the country, from copper to aluminium to lead and zinc, is under threat because China is aggressively seeking to dominate those industrial supply chains. They're doing so in a way that is clearly inconsistent with international trade rules. And there's hardly anyone raising this issue or the government raising it with China. Well, and as I say, look, democracy would be great, but as I say, it's not our job to spread democracy to the billion Chinese people.
No,
That's a matter for China. But it is our job to protect our own jobs and our own interests and our own industry, our own manufacturing capability, and hardly anyone is taking up that fight right now.
Well, no, look, Matt, I agree with you. You know, this isn't some idea that we need to idealistically turn China into some sort of liberal democracy. But I think what we want to do is make sure that they're not dominating the Pacific. And, you know, Nick Reese, I want to take this over to you, though, because the senator makes a really good point here about all those jobs in critical minerals industries, in coal and all of these things. Part of the reason, of course, is because of China's really sharp and, you know, unethical and really an awful lot of times illegal, according to various trade courts, practices. But part of that, too, is because this country and the Albanese government has insisted so much on net zero and other environmental regulations that has meant we also simply cannot compete. So it's sort of funny that we are, on the one hand, saying we want to do more business with China, but at the same time, we're tying one hand behind our back on this.
Look, James, I thought your editorial earlier was very entertaining, and
thank you. Thank you.
I read Alexander Downer's piece in the Australian today, which, look, I thought was entertaining as well. Unfortunately, on both scores, I think you've got it wrong, though. And unfortunately, you know, the conservative side of politics in Australia has got a long history of getting it badly wrong when it comes to dealing with China. I mean, probably most famously, there was Gough Whitlam's trip to China in 1971, which, you know, Billy McMahon was then the Liberal Prime Minister, and the Conservatives all piled in and criticised Whitlam for visiting China. Of course, shortly thereafter, Richard Nixon visited China, opened up relations with the West, and it was, you know, one of Nixon's finest moments as president. So you know, in more recent times, you've got like Scott Morrison, who thought, you know, beating up on China and criticising Australians of Chinese background was somehow a pathway to election victory.
Hang on a second.
Sorry, completely disastrous.
Nicholas Reese, we're going to pull you up on that here. Let's pull you up on that here. Sorry.
Long history getting it badly wrong.
Sorry, Nicholas Reese, we have to pull you up on that here. And I think Matt wants to hop in on this too. But, you know, we're not talking about, this is what Labor always does. They always say if you criticize the CCP, you're criticizing Chinese people. Nothing could be further from the truth. And Scott Morrison, I think, did an admirable job of asking a very simple question, which the world deserves an answer to, which is, where did COVID come from? Open the books.
Well, it was clearly part of an election strategy.
Was it wrong to ask that question?
And
was it wrong to ask that question?
And it was something that has been the subject of many investigations, academic studies, and of course it's the right question. But
your town was
we all know. We've all been around long enough to know that that's not what it was about. It was about Scott Morrison trying to muscle up against China
that's ridiculous.
in a frankly rude way to try and win an election. It was disastrous on both fronts. You know,
so Nick,
China didn't do what Morrison wanted.
Nick, let's let Matt talk. Nick, let Matt talk.
What actually happened was, James absolutely right, it wasn't actually even Scott Morrison, it was the Foreign Minister Maurice Payne asked a reasonable question about a need for an investigation into the origins of COVID. And in response to that, the Chinese government issued 14 demands through the Australian media, may I say, not to the Australian government, of the Australian government to change our laws on a bunch of things, or else but. And I think any self-respecting government, hopefully this government would do the same, and they're about to be tested potentially on this, but hopefully any Australian government would tell another foreign government, no, we don't just respond to bullying and threats like China tried to do to us. And so they did. They did ban our coal, they banned our wheat, they banned our barley. And guess what? We didn't miss a beat. Despite the Labor Party saying the sky was going to fall in. I remember Murray Watt in the Senate saying, the Australian coal industry is going to be devastated because M.Canavan is not toting up with China. Well, it didn't happen because we sold our coal to elsewhere. China was hurt by not buying our coal, and they eventually had to back down. So it was a massive victory for Australia by doing that. And I'm sick and tired of the Labor Party not standing up for our country on that, because you're about to be tested as well now, because China has just said that if Anthony Albanese goes through his election commitment to take back the port of Darwin, they are going to place trade sanctions on us. So what is the Labor Party going to do? Now, I hope they deliver on their election commitment and they stand up to such threats and bullying, because there's no way any self-respecting country should let other nations dictate terms to it like China has tried to do in the last couple of years. And thank God for Scott Morrison for not kneeling over, not backing down on what is our sovereign nation and independence.
And I mean, this is the thing, Nicholas Reese. Let's just if you look across the Pacific, the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP government led by Xi Jinping, I want to be very clear about what we're talking about, has used all sorts of aggressive tactics, built islands where they're not supposed to build islands, intimidated the Philippines, intimidated Vietnam, intimidated all sorts of other countries with navies, with Coast Guard fleets. They're doing similar things here. At some point, free countries have to simply say enough, don't we?
Well, let's hope we don't actually, James. Let's hope that China continues to be a rational, self-interested actor, because Australia has got very rich, become very prosperous off the back of the economic rise of China. I mean, after that Whitlam visit, we've seen 5 decades of phenomenal economic growth of China, and Australia has been one of the world's biggest beneficiaries of that. We enjoy incredibly good, prosperous lives in this country, thanks in no small part to the rise of China economically. And so what you see in Anthony Albanese travelling as Prime Minister to China is a very pragmatic, self-interested, independently minded Prime Minister putting Australia's interests first. We've done very well out of China,
let's move on, guys.
Let's hope we continue to do so.
Let's
hope we continue to do so.
Let's let that be the last word, Matt. I know you got a lot to say on this. I do too, and I think the viewers at home too.
I was just going to say that the problem I've got is I've always, and I was the Resources Minister, wanted to see good relations with China. They wouldn't let me visit. This was long before the COVID issue, but they wouldn't even let Australian ministers go there. So remember, the original threats happened because we had the temerity to pass a foreign interference law, Nick. That's when the threats and bullying from China started, a law that the Labor Party supported. And so again, we've got to stand up to this sort of bullying. But the issue we've got now is we're far too dependent on China. So I don't understand why the Prime Minister is spending his longest visit in China and not visiting India or Vietnam or Indonesia and other countries, because we clearly need to diversify.
Well, again, exactly right. Let's move on, guys.
Hang on a second. I mean, let's not forget, Matt, that China is bigger than Australia's next 5 trade partners
and that's
combined.
Because,
so why is he going there?
That's exactly my point.
Because they generate
that's a big risk.
For our
we
country.
have not
you obviously haven't run a business.
Both of you were calling
one of your customers is that big.
Rational self-interest.
Don't make me stop this car.
No.
Right.
Nick,
no.
It's not risk management.
It is not risk management. It is diversification. We need to diversify, and I want to talk. We need to diversify our questions too here, and I want to talk about too, because this is also a great story here. This story about the ABC puts in an FOI request to the Treasury, and they find out. Guess what? Oh, yeah, no. Sorry, we are spending too much money. Oh, yeah, we are going to need to raise taxes. Oh, yeah, that 1.2 billion house target. I don't know who's going to build those houses. Isn't going to happen. But Matt Canavan, let me start with you here. Why is the government so secretive? They were acting like this is a matter of national security, that we can't know what Treasury thinks about the forecast for Australians. This seems, to me, against the idea of a very transparent government, Senator.
Well, look, I'm not going to be hypocritical here, James. I mean, all governments don't like to reveal advice from their departments or agencies. We would be the same. I don't think that's particularly the major issue here. The sad thing, I think, for our country is that we have a premier economic advisory body who has given up on spending restraint and just telling the government raise taxes. I mean, I've said on this show before that pre-COVID, your government, the Australian government, spent $477 billion a year, $478 billion a year, sorry. And now, 7 years later, in the last budget, this financial year, you're set to spend $777 billion. $300 billion more, a year more on an average basis. Now, there are only about 10 million households in Australia, so that's an extra $30,000 per household. So every house watching this show tonight, your government is spending $30,000 a year more. That's not the total spending. They're spending that more compared to COVID. Now, are we getting $30,000 a year more extra services?
I don't think so.
Why isn't the Treasury saying, hey, maybe there's a few items we could cut back on here, we could have some efficiencies, and so that we don't place such a burden on the Australian taxpayer? Because at least there's one bit of honesty in this advice, is if we keep going with the spending we've got, taxes are going to have to go up. We can't keep borrowing like this as we are. And I don't think the Australian people have been prepared for that, and the government hasn't been honest about that. And we need to have some ideas here that are not just about raising taxes, but to actually about government spending within their means.
Yeah, I mean, Nicholas Rees, that makes an awful lot of good points there. Putting aside the secrecy of it, we're not in a great position if we are going to have to raise taxes and we can't get all these houses built and all of these promises that, we've had of great economic management and solving the housing crisis. Well, according to at least this Treasury bureaucrat, and I think probably a lot of people out there just with their own eyes think that ain't going to happen.
Look, I actually thought it was a good thing for Australia that this advice has become public. I think we should be able to openly and transparently see the advice that ministers are receiving on most issues. I totally accept there would be exceptions to that, on sensitive defence matters, commercial dealings, where the government would be prejudiced if the information was disclosed. But on so many things, I think we're better off as a democracy if the advice is out there in the public. Doesn't mean that the government we elect needs to follow the advice all the time. In fact, we elect them to be our democratic leaders, not just to follow the bureaucratic advice all the time, but actually putting that advice out there is a good thing. I can tell you at the City of Melbourne, we've got a council meeting tomorrow night. There's a number of things we're voting on to make decisions on. The advice of the public servants at the City of Melbourne is actually publicly available for people to see on the website. They put a report and a recommendation to council. Tomorrow night, we vote on whether we follow those recommendations, not follow it, or do a variation on the advice we've got. But it's all out in the open, and it's a really good system.
Look, I can see the logic of that. Gentlemen, stick around. Don't go anywhere. We're going to come back. More Monday Night Fights here on Paul Murray Live. Now, you don't go anywhere either, because we're going to have a lot more fired-up debate after the break.
This program is brought to you by Harvey Norman. Shop in store and online. Best brands, best range, best prices guaranteed.
When the spin machine powers down, the late debate powers up.
Straight talk,
no spin, and zero patience for political nonsense.
Just brutal honesty and a bit of fun on the side.
It's about calling out the rubbish wherever it comes from.
we don't follow the media narrative.
We interrogate it.
With James McPherson, Caleb Bond and Freya Leach. This is the Late Debate. Monday to Thursday, 10 p.m.
Go Harvey Norman. Buy now with no deposit, 16 months interest free on a participating Latitude credit card and get a bonus gift card up to $1,000. Shop our huge range now with no deposit, 16 months interest free from Latitude and get a bonus $100 gift card for every $1,000 you spend. New customers must be approved. Minimum finance $1,000. T's and C's, charges and exclusions apply. Equal monthly payment plan and monthly credit card fee currently $10.95 applies. Don't miss no deposit, 16 months interest free from Latitude at Harvey Norman now.
Go!
What a hotel.
Right? And only $370 a night on my favorite site.
What? You didn't check Trivago?
I got mine for $250. You have to check Trivago.
Oh, yeah? Prove it.
On Trivago, you can compare hotel prices from multiple different sites.
Even your favorite one.
Yeah, see? Same hotel. $120 less.
You didn't check Trivago? I didn't check Trivago.
Check Trivago to compare prices and save up to 30%. Hotel? Trivago.
Don't let magic moments pass you by. Snapfish them. Snap it. Share it. Love it. With a Snapfish photo book. Give the perfect gift. Visit snapfish.com.au.
With Light and Easy, you're cooking less, eating better, and getting great results.
I tried a weight loss drug, but it just didn't work for me. Light and Easy was the only thing that really worked for me. I lost 102 kilos and I feel amazing.
Enjoy healthy and delicious award-winning meals delivered to your door. No shopping, no cooking, no stress.
I didn't have to count the calories and their food's always healthy. Light and Easy made that so much easier than anything else.
Live a healthier, better life with Light and Easy.
It was really important for me that you love reading as much as I did. And I love that we're able to connect over books. The more you can read, the better you become at understanding the world.
And I think what BookTok on TikTok taught me is that if you expand your horizons, you can expand your mind.
Through BookTok, you are finding books that represent your experience.
These are 5 books that have left a lasting impact on me.
Reading doesn't really feel like studying, so being able to do something that I enjoy and having it help in my school is really useful.
Welcome back to the program. James Morrow here, hosting Monday Night Fights on Paul Murray Live. We've got Nicholas Reese and Senator M.Canavan here. We've had a lot of fired-up debate before the break. We're going to have some fired-up debate in this segment, too. Hey, let's just move back, gents, real quick, because I just want to talk and get one more little China topic knocked over here, because, Matt, this one here I think is also important. Port of Darwin. The Prime Minister said right before the election, he said, I want to take that back. And it was sort of a throwaway thing to gazump Peter Dutton. Very clever, doesn't seem so clever now because it seems to be interfering with his trip. But frankly, the Port of Darwin, getting that back in our hands, that can't be a bad idea, can it?
Well, look, I raised that before, James. If nothing else, the Prime Minister did make a promise to the Australian people at the election that he would do this. Take that back into Australian hands. I think it's something that the Australian people have long wanted to see. It's an extremely important and vital port for our nation's interests. We have a large naval base there. I should stress that the Chinese-owned or Chinese-leased part of the port is not where our defence assets are, but be that as it may,
it's right next door.
It's a very sensitive location. It's right next door, and really it makes sense, I think, for that to be in Australian hands. Now, as I said earlier, I don't think we should in any way here, it's a bit of a test, the newly elected Albanese government, we certainly shouldn't see our government renege on a promise to the Australian people based on a demand from another country. And I also think if it is true that China wants to be a friendly nation to us, that this makes perfect common sense. I mean, can you imagine if an Australian infrastructure company, say a Macquarie Bank, sought to take a lease over the Tianjin port near Beijing? I mean, it's just not.
I can't see that
concept. So,
I can't see that happening.
What's good for the goose should be good for the gander, and it's in our national interest, and that should be respected from another country. And should I say, no one is talking about taking it back,
no, of course not,
or something like that. We don't.
But it's just
like
ending.
That, but we should pursue our national interest.
Correct. And just on that national interest question, there, Nicholas Reese, you say. And you made an eloquent case that really trade with China is the thing that makes us all rich and everybody be happy. And that's the Albanese line here. But what about this idea about critical infrastructure? Because there are controversies in a lot of countries, the United States, here as well. And people are passing legislation in some places saying foreign governments, particularly hostile governments, and governments that are totalitarian dictatorships like China, cannot own critical infrastructure because they have the ability to cut us off or make trouble for us in times of crisis. Would you be supportive of, even as you support all of this trade with Beijing, also saying, there need to be limits on what they can own in terms of infrastructure, farmland, resources here in Australia as a matter of our sovereignty, not as a matter of trade, but as sovereignty?
Short answer is yes, James. I do support those measures. I mean, I think the Port of Darwin is a strategically important asset for our country, and it's not surprising that our Prime Minister and the then opposition leader, Peter Dutton, both made promises to see that asset return to Australian ownership after the election. And Prime Minister won, Anthony Albanese, and now he's going to move to do that. And look, I'm sure it's something that will come up in discussions in Beijing, and I'm confident that the Prime Minister will explain very calmly and rationally the reasons for doing so. And as I think Matt has quite eloquently said, China will do the same thing for their nationally strategically important assets. And so, look, the port's one good example of something that fits in that category. And yes, I do think there are other assets that fit in that category as well. And so, again, what's you need to have a framework that you use to apply to make these decisions. And so that includes things like things that are important to preserving our sovereignty and things that ultimately serve our national interest to remain in Australian hands.
Absolutely right. Hey, listen, that's pretty well said there. I would even say that's eloquent. But, hey, let's just end on a fun note here, because there has been the FIFA Club World Cup final, and it was visited by none other than your favorite president, Donald J. Trump. And he had this thought about whether we should call it soccer or football. Have a look at this.
Johnny's a friend of mine. He's done such a great job with the league and with soccer, or they would call it football, but I guess we call it soccer. I'm not sure that change could be made very easily.
What if we make an executive order? We can only say football from now on.
I think we could do that. I think I could do that.
Quick responses from both of you. M.Canavan, soccer or football? What should it be called?
Well, mate, I've got a 10-year-old son who's mad about football, and that's what he demands it to be called. So I'll have to back that one. And how about Donald Trump on the celebration stage with the team? Stuff like Trump's just all about getting there and making it about you.
It was an iconic shot. I don't know if we've got it there on the screen for you there. This guy, whenever you think it was politics, he can churn out the images day in and day out. Nicholas Reese, very quickly, soccer or football? What are we calling it?
Oh, look, if I'm at a soccer function, I, of course, call it football. If I'm at an Aussie rules or rugby function, I call the round ball game soccer. So, use the right names for the right audiences is how I approach it.
Very diplomatic, gentlemen. We're going to have to leave it there. Nicholas Reese, M.Canavan, thanks so much for joining me tonight on Paul Murray Live. Now, after the break, I'm going to show you a funny video from the United States that you're not going to want to miss. Stick around.